So I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting of the Huntersville Town Board to order. If you wouldn't mind, for everyone sitting up here at the dais, everyone in the room, to pull out your cell phones and make sure they're either on vibrate or completely turned off. Everyone up here will do the same. And now if you'll join us for a moment of silence. Now, if you'll please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's great to see so many of you out this evening on a Tuesday evening. We will now move to staff questions. Commissioner Munger, I believe you had a staff question.
Caught me off guard there. I almost forgot. Yeah, I was wondering if a staff member could give us an update on some of the lane closures that are happening this weekend on I-77 at Gilead.
Bobby, you got any updates on that, or Ethan?
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. We will have lane closures on Gilead Road overnight from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m., happening September 7th, 8th, and 9th, I believe. DOT shared that with us on Friday evening, and it's since been posted to our website and all of our social media channels.
Are there any other questions for staff? Commissioner Kidwell.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. This is either for Chief Graham or Emily, our town attorney. Since we have the golf cart now in use, I'll wait. You might want to stop halfway after I got this question. Since we now have the golf cart in use on our trails, have we obtained insurance and have we come up with a policy regarding the use of the golf cart?
We had one originally about special use vehicles. We've added that to it, and it's going through our review process. I don't think there's any issues with it, but it is insurance. We have to have it tagged and titled, and they can be on the road and everything like that. It's already been done. It's already been registered with the state. That was one of your questions.
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
Second question, separate. Getting a lot of complaints from individuals who live on Sherwood about the traffic for Huntersville Elementary, blocking driveways, causing some hazards. What is our best recourse to stop that from happening for individuals who may need to get out for doctor's appointments and things like that?
First of all, we work with the school every year. We have worked with the previous principal. We worked with this principal. We have asked that they allow the cars come in earlier than have been to get some of those off the road. They think that's a liability. They don't want the cars on there until a certain time. So they're telling parents don't get there till, I think it's 15 minutes before dismissal, so whatever it's supposed to be. And they're letting them in there. We've asked them to double stack, which has helped a little bit, but everybody's going to come at one time. In the morning, it's spread out, people getting dropped off at different times. If a car's coming up there and it's moving to get in there, they're not violating the law. If they're sitting in the road, stopping traffic for an extended period, they are. And we've asked them not to do that. But this is a school issue, and we're trying to help them as much as possible.
So I emailed the same thing as well as Commissioner Boone did. I was there the other day picking my child up at 2:30, and I got there at 2:20, and they were stacked up down Sherwood past Mr. Ginyard's house. So it's 2:20.
Last week was our first week of school. I sent an email today to our traffic squad to go over there and start policing that. Give me another week and we'll see how we're doing.
If not, we're going to need to citate people and make them volunteer for the PTA.
We can do that as well.
And just,
We'll put that on.
just as a point of clarification, I didn't know two of my fellow commissioners had emailed.
Yes.
So those questions were
Yes,
asked.
sir.
and
No, it was a
answered.
good
I do
question.
apologize.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a quick question? Just to
Absolutely.
follow up on that one. So I know that the plan is to replace Huntersville Elementary. Have you all had conversations with CMS to ensure that stacking at the new school will not, this won't happen?
We had conversation with the representative at CMS that when they start to build the school, that they please get in contact with us to give our input. And he said that that was one of their priorities, is to getting everybody off Sherwood.
Okay,
But I don't know when that's going to occur.
thank you. Commissioner Kovacs?
Don't go away.
ma'am.
Speaking of schools, I've had a lot of people reach out to me, especially because I'm in the schools, asking about SROs. Now that Cornelius has funded their SROs, people are requesting that we fund ours. And from my understanding, it's not necessarily would be a funding issue, but more so we have 6 schools, elementary schools, that do not have officers. So can you help out with explaining SROs?
The question about Cornelius funding them, yes, they did. They asked for one position to cover 2 schools. The board came back and said, nope, we're going to cover both of them. They hired 2 new people for their 2 elementary schools. Yes, we have 6. Do we need to hire 6 people to cover those? I think we could probably start with 3 and and have back and forth. We used to be in the elementary schools quite a bit more when we taught DARE. We then started getting pushback about, hey, you're taking away class instructional time. This is where the end of year testing goes on. We really need the time back, number one. Number two, CMS pays for our middle school and our high school folks to be at their respective schools. And so they were gone for 2 or 3 hours every day at the elementary. They were not at their schools. We had other issues, crimes, fights, things like that. So they asked that they not be off their campus. So that cut our elementary school time to nothing, basically. So we've asked our other officers, hey, can you stop in every once and check on them? Am I interested in adding SROs at the schools? Of course. I'd be more than happy to look into that.
You have to hire 3
So I was
additional.
going to say that the hiring is going to be the
least.
problem. And getting folks in there. I think I could probably have some individuals that are currently in the police department that would be interested in going to the school resource officer program. So it'd just be hiring 3 people fresh off the line to take patrol places.
Commissioner Boone?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Follow up on her question, would we have to have an additional sergeant since we had 3 additional?
No. We currently have a SRO at the 3 middle schools, Bradley, Alexander, and North Learning. We have 2 at the high school in North Meck, 2 at the high school at Hopewell, and then we have 1 that covers Lake Norman Charter Middle and High School, and that's on a different contract. So CMS is paying for 7. Lake Norman Charter is paying for 1. They have 1 sergeant. That sergeant generally is to take care of whatever those folks need, as well as run the stuff during the summer and fill in when someone's sick. We would probably not need to hire another. We would not need to hire another sergeant to take care of that.
Awesome. I had one more, sorry.
Commissioner Kovacs?
You're still
Yeah.
the star.
So far, so good. I'm doing good.
People have brought some information to my attention. They were wondering the validity of it. Are we having problems with smash and grabs at local grocery stores? Or problems with robberies at grocery stores?
I have not heard anything to that effect. We have information that our lieutenants pass on to command staff, things like that. I've not seen any calls for service, anything like that. Be more than happy to look into it, but I'm not aware of anything.
That's what I was going to ask. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for staff members at this time? All right, seeing none, we're going to move into public comments, requests, presentations, and I do have a proclamation this evening. Whereas September 17th, 2023 marks the 236th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention, and whereas it is fitting and proper to read, study, and preach the greatest document of human liberty, and to protect the freedoms set forth in the Bill of Rights. And whereas it is fitting and proper to officially recognize this magnificent document and the anniversary of its creation, and whereas it is fitting and proper to officially recognize the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion, and whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America designating September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week. Now, therefore, I, Melinda Bales, Mayor of Huntersville, do hereby proclaim September the 17th through the 23rd, 2023, as Constitution Week in Huntersville, North Carolina, and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals of the framers of the Constitution had in 1787. Now, I'd like to present this to the Daughters of the American Revolution chapter, the Alexandria chapter.
Thank you.
I'm gonna pass this to you, and if you would like to please share a few words.
Yes, don't go away.
I won't go away.
We were here last year. The mayor is now a member of our chapter, and so that's a good thing. And we would like to thank you for being the mayor of Huntersville by giving you this small gift.
Well, thank you very
And we
much.
need you to open that.
Oh, okay.
And I'm sure after some very interesting town board meetings, that will come in handy. And it's to remind you that you work for we the people.
I do work for
We don't
the
work for
people.
you.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that.
All
Thank you. Thank you
So-
very much.
My cohort, Eileen, is going to pass out some constitutions to everybody who's sitting here, and while she's doing that, I have a question for the Huntersville Town Board, because I'll have another glass to give away. There's one state on the Constitution that is spelled incorrectly. What state is it? No, you may not. Who said that? You are absolutely wrong. Now, I have a question for the audience.
Thank you.
During World War II, after Pearl Harbor was bombed, they took the Constitution out of the National Archives and moved it somewhere for safekeeping. Where did they take it? You can't answer. Your time is over. Who said it? Fort Knox. You are right. Okay, who's the oldest person who signed the Constitution? And how old was he? Who's the oldest person, who's the oldest delegate who signed the Constitution? What? Yes, how old was he?
Thank you so very much. This is great. Truly, though, as we move into the week of the 17th, don't forget and take that out and remember and read through it, because at the end of the day, if we don't know it, we can't protect it. And our liberty is something that we need to protect. Now, we are going to move into public comments, of which we have two. The first person who has signed up is Jeff Locke. And Mr. Locke, you have 3 minutes, and if you'll please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Jeff Locke. I live at 13522 Mary Chase. I heard a rumor that you guys were considering upping the parking minimums in the town of Huntersville. If you believe the people that get up here on a regular basis, they tell you it's impossible to find parking in Huntersville. They can never find parking. I'd like to give you a little bit of a different perspective on that. Instead, I'd like to talk about the high costs of having too much parking. It's bad for local businesses. It makes it much, much harder for them to adapt and to establish themselves. it incentivizes larger businesses that can afford larger plots of land. Because it's bad for business, it's bad for the town. It decreases the amount of revenue that you can raise by taxes on these businesses. And thirdly, like, it's bad for traffic. Like, having all of these businesses far apart and far apart from our homes makes it harder to walk there, to bike there. It makes us have to get in cars. And because we all have to get in a car, that's more cars on the road. Huntersville doesn't really have a it doesn't really have a parking problem. I've never had a problem parking anywhere in Huntersville, not even Burkdale. But I've had problems sitting in a car for half an hour to come here from my job in Davidson. I think upping these parking minimums, I think it's kind of overreach. If anything, like, we should just abolish parking minimums and let the free market decide what the land is actually worth. And it'll be better for the town, better for business, better for traffic. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. The next person who has signed up to speak is Don Gordon. Thank you, sir. You have 3 minutes, and if you'll please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Don Gordon. I live at 208 Canadas Road here in Huntersville, North Carolina. Thank you for letting me speak, and thank you for letting me address a question that's going to be brought up later tonight regarding the Environmental Studies Committee. I am a grandfather of 4, soon to be 5 by Friday of this week. And I am a widower, and I have been a Baptist minister for most of my adult life, for 35 years. I made a transition a few years ago because my first grandchild was born. And I recognized that this grandchild might well live into the 22nd century. And it sort of blew my mind that they would be living in that century. And even though I've been in ministry, I did my undergraduate work in scientific fields, and I believe science, even while I believe in God. And the more we learn about science, the more we can alter and change based on what we learn. And the more I know or learn about God, I can alter my understanding of who God is, who I believe is unchanging. So I just want to thank those of you who are interested in the environment and what the environment is going to be like in the 22nd century when our grandchildren will be living here, and not just my grandchildren. I have a 3-minute limit here, and if I had 3 hours, I would show you pictures of my lovely grandchildren and talk to you a long time about them. But there are grandchildren around the world, not just here in Huntersville. And so I really want to encourage our community and the town council to find ways to study the environment and our impact on the environment, and how we can be better managers and stewards of what God has created and given to us. So thank you for the time.
All right, we are now going to move to agenda changes. Are there any changes to the agenda? Commissioner Kidwell.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move item 8E, approve Lake Norman Chamber Business Expo Facility Usage Agreement, to item 10D under other business.
Are there any other changes? All right. Is there a motion on the floor to change the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second, all right, those in favor? Any opposed? All right, so now we'll move to adopt the agenda as amended. Is there a motion on the floor?
Motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion carries. Is there a motion for the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second? All right, thank you, Commissioner Kovacs. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay. We will now move into the public hearings. And item 9A, this is to conduct a public hearing to receive public input on proposed traffic calming measures on Swansboro Lane. Ms. Mastro Francesco, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes, good evening, Madam Mayor, Commissioners, Mr. Roberts. I'm here to present to you the traffic calming measures for Swansboro Lane. Is this gonna work? It wasn't on. I got it. All right, so I'll start with the location of this street, as many of you might not know where it is, the process of our traffic calming policy. I'll share with you the data results, and then our proposed solutions. So we are here at the top right corner at Town Hall. Swanson is on the west side of 77, a bit south from us near Hambright Road. So if we zoom in a little bit more, you'll see Swansboro is to the west of Patterson Road and just past Lake Norman Elementary School, Lake Norman Charter Elementary School. It's a small community called Yorkdale, and it's a no outlet community, so there's 3 roads in it with 3 cul-de-sacs. So this is a street view of the community. It's a mature community, 2 lanes, ditch section, very simple community. In August, the representative asked for a traffic calming procedure. This community does not have an HOA, so there's a different procedure for that. The representative has to get 3 additional signatures from the community, all in favor of a study. So that was completed and provided to us. In November, we put out our radars, and the first collection of data said that the 85th percentile was driving at 33 miles per hour. The policy says anything over 30 miles per hour, we can continue with the process. So that's where we went from here. The 30 miles per hour limit is based on the posted speed of the community, which is 25. And then we add 5 miles per hour, so that's 30. So anything over 30 would mean we continue. So the neighborhood also has to do some work. They provided me with their information of the neighborhood awareness campaign, so that was accepted and approved. And next is we go into type 1 solution implementation, which means I asked the HPPD to increase their police presence in the area, and at a period of time, I put up temporary installation of radar feedback signs. So that's a big sign that will say posted 25, and then it would flash when you were going too fast. So after that is done, we repeat the process following the same criteria. So the second data collection was in May of this year, and the 85th percentile was at 31 miles per hour. Now that was a reduction from the first collection at 33, but it still went over the threshold, which that means we move to physical traffic calming measures, because that's what the policy says is warranted. So I spoke with the neighborhood representative, and we went through some proposed solutions, and they gave me their recommendation based on that. And then last month, we had the call for public hearing. It was in the newspaper, and here we are today with the presentation. So I'll go over the options, and then I'll tell you what I heard back for input from our fire department and our police department. So the first one would just be 2 speed humps, and it would be along the main road of Swansboro Lane. And they're just before the 2 intersections where possibly half the community would be slowing down to make their left. This is just a very basic layout of what we would normally put for speed humps. The next one would be to increase it to 3. So we added the third one further up near the end where there's less, I want to say, population in the community. So this is what I would standard, just typical layouts that I would talk to the community representative, and then she also showed it to her community. They would prefer the 3 speed humps in their community. I reached out to Chief Graham of the police department and asked his input on this, and he came up with just the 2 speed humps, so the one before this. I asked Chief Detoli of our fire department, and he says he does not like speed humps. Every second counts. Every second counts when they get a call and they have to go out there and deal with their call. So that made the engineering department think, what else could we do? Since this is really just what we would normally do for this 2-lane ditch section. So we came up with a third option. It is mini traffic circles. Mini traffic circles are placed at the intersection. They are there to have people slow down before they maneuver around the circle. So they're like a roundabout, but much, much smaller. They're 16 feet in diameter. And for this location, I would recommend just 2 of them. So if you have not seen a mini circle live and in person, this is a picture of one. So 16-foot diameter, typically made out of concrete. There is no signs in the middle. There's no landscaping. I would like you to notice the mountable curb around the perimeter. So we were a little bit concerned with the fire trucks. Chief Detoli went and picked the ladder truck, which is his most expensive, lowest clearance truck, drove it over this and felt comfortable with a vehicle driving straight over it, not straight, a little bit off to the right. So half the vehicle would mount it and come down, and it would not damage his ladder truck. So he was like, perfect, I like these ones. So this would be the fire department's suggestion. If I put one of these in Swansboro, this is more of the layout. It's a T intersection. And if you can see on the right-hand side, the street has to maneuver over to the right. Well, if you notice, this affects driveways. It shortens the driveway for that homeowner. So this is what it would look like on the Swanson Street. I also want to tell you that this exact location is new in Huntersville. We took the streets over earlier in the year, and since then, the traffic division of our police department has been flooded with calls with people not driving them correctly. So there is a learning curve on using these traffic circles, the mini ones. So you're supposed to drive straight and maneuver around to go straight, or continue 3/4 of the way to make your left. Well, some vehicles are being driven just straight left through the circle, which then people coming to make the right just would be impeded by that. And so that's what kind of calls the police are getting. They would rather we not have traffic mini circles. So to reiterate, this is what the fire department would like. The 3 speed humps is what the community would like. The police are okay with 2 speed humps. That is what the engineering department would like to recommend for you. I will show you one more photo. If we go back, we stick with the mini circles, and we're showing it in aerial on Swansboro. So the mini circle's in the middle of the intersection. So then I've got to the right, take a little bit of that land and turn it into road. It's a ditch section, so I need another about 8-foot ditch. But then I'd have to ask that homeowner for some right-of-way. Now, it's not a lot of right-of-way, but will that homeowner want to give us some of this right-of-way? If they don't, would the board be willing to exercise eminent domain for a traffic calming measure? Speed humps are always built within the right-of-way. We never ask for right-of-way, and they're easy to maintain. There's a lot of pros and cons. The engineering department's gonna recommend the 2. I do have the applicant here who would want to speak. I don't know if you want me to open it for questions, or are we having?
Is it possible to do those, I don't know where I've seen them, but the ones that are split so fire trucks can maneuver through those? Yeah, like
So, right, so those are called speed cushions. They're speed cushions, and sometimes, most of the time, they're made of rubber, and you fix it into the ground. They, according to Public Works, are a maintenance nightmare. When they do have to shovel them 1 or 2 times a year, the trucks will like lift the whole pad up, the cushion up. The fire department seemed fine with those, but even if we made them just out of asphalt instead of getting the rubber kind, Public Works would not recommend that for maintenance reasons.
So everyone's on a different side.
Everyone's, yes.
What's the cost difference in the three?
All right, so a speed hump installed is around 4,000 to 5,000. So
Per?
per speed hump, so we do 3 or 2, depending on the option. The mini circles, this is all based on FHWA stats. The mini circles are 10 to 15,000 each, and we would want 2.
And how many people live in that neighborhood or in that section?
I counted, just a second. I have it written down on one of my lovely sheets. I counted 55 parcels in the community.
And those are home parcels?
Yes.
Okay.
Homes.
I had one more and it just went. Oh, how many people would we have to get land acquisition? If you do the circles?
We do the circles, it'd be 2. Be the ones directly across from the Ts, the T intersections. That's not included the price of the mini circles.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Kidwell.
Yes. What kind of traffic calming device would everybody agree on from Public Works through the fire department?
Just the regular speed humps, the traditional speed humps,
The 2.
the 2.
Commissioner Munger.
Yeah, I'm more curious about the process. You said you had one person ask and 3 other people sign up together. So you had 4 people out of what you just said was 55. Is it typically a percentage? How does it, and I know HOA is completely different. We deal with the HOA board, but how is it that 4 houses can come up and out of 55 and make this happen? I'm curious.
That's the policy that was in place. It's not a percentage of how many people. That's all she needed to sign to start the process, but she has been talking to the community at large.
I would assume, there's a larger number. It just, in this particular instance, it might make sense, but there might be scenarios where we have 100 houses and 4
Right.
people say, I want speed bumps, and everyone else is like, no, but then we kick that thing down the road
Right.
and start doing things. So it's an interesting process that
So even if it was an HOA board, and let's say half the community didn't want it,
Yeah.
half the community did want it, it's ultimately the board of their HOAs. So then half the community would not be happy if I put them.
see, and I'd be okay if only half were unhappy, but if it were to a point where 90% of the people were unhappy, which is potential in this type of scenario, that's a problem.
Right.
Well, I would say just remember, though, it comes back to this board, for this board to make a decision on whether they go in or not. Because
But to the best of our knowledge, we have 4 people who asked for this out of 55.
Commissioner Kidwell.
Yeah, and I'd agree with Commissioner Munger down there. But that is one of the reasons we're having a public hearing, so hopefully we can get, I don't know how we get this information to everybody, because I don't know who's heading it up, and I appreciate that efforts, and I don't know them, but, we don't know if they're actually hitting everybody, or if they're just hitting the certain people, if they know everybody in the neighborhood.
And when we did the call, it does go in
an
the
unknown.
newspaper for 4 weeks prior to this meeting.
Not everybody gets the paper.
No, but that is the policy.
So we do have one person who has signed up
Yes.
to speak. Oh, Commissioner Boyd.
Representative.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief Graham, it's always, when it comes to police and fire, there's always that little competition that we always have. And maybe we can have like a pickleball competition to find out whose idea. But I'm more interested in, when it comes to response times, life and death, overall in this community, how often are we going on calls for emergencies that require life and death situations, and also where there is fire calls where the obstruction of either a mini circle or a calming device will impede that response time.
Just like anywhere else in town, you have no idea where these emergencies are going to happen at. If you're asking me, is Swansboro a higher percentage of having a life and death situation? Probably not. We're down there running traffic, you know, we have domestics, things like that, but it's not known for a high crime area, things like that. And I'm not necessarily against traffic circles. I just want to make sure everybody uses them correctly. That's not a problem.
Commissioner Phillips.
Kevin, can you come up here and give an explanation of how these things impact Public Works, like in your day-to-day operations, please?
Sure. We tried the speed cushions several years ago in a couple different locations. We ended up coming back and taking those up because not only the way they affix to the asphalt, when the asphalt deteriorates, they start peeling up and coming up. And we found that it was more challenging to keep them down. We had some that were on Devonshire Drive, which is on our bare pavement snow route, and the snow plow absolutely just peels them up if you don't know they're there. But not only during that, it was just because they're just they're lag bolted into the current asphalt. So when the asphalt starts deteriorating around them, they just pop up. So we found that it was more economical to go back with just traditional speed humps.
And then with the circles and like you guys having to plow when it snows, is this a street you plow? And what kind of problems do the circles cause in those situations?
That Swansboro Lane and the side streets on Swansboro would be way down in the tiers of priority. Chances are good that Mother Nature gets those cleared before we do. So from a snowplow perspective, that wouldn't be an issue. A mini circle wouldn't be an issue on that street.
Any other questions for staff at this point? We do have someone who has signed up to speak, Crystal Camp. Ms. Camp, as you come, you have 3 minutes, and if you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak. Again, my name is Crystal Camp, and I do live at 11800 Swansboro Lane. And I did start the traffic calming process with Laura, and we've worked together for this on a very long time. There are 55 parcels there, but there's about 53 that are currently occupied. The neighborhood is an older neighborhood. We've been there since 2003. My dad owned the land prior to that, so in '84. So I've been in Huntersville a long time, seen a lot of changes. The neighborhood has changed. A lot of the older residents have now moved on and are renting some of those properties out. So some of the people that are currently there don't have a big investment in any changes to the community, which is why I think we see a lot of speeders. There's a lot of kids in the neighborhood, and I actually do live at that T intersection. So I'd be one of the ones that have to give that right away for the traffic circles. We are not interested in the traffic circles, just the way it's going to affect the yard, and we have a brick mailbox, and that may have to be moved, so it'd be a lot of different expense for us probably to do that. We are interested in the traffic humps, which is what a lot of the other neighborhoods in Huntersville have, and that's what we would like to do or like to see happen. I have 8-year-old twins. They can't ride their bicycles on the road. We don't have sidewalks. So we have to pack up, hike it over to the park, go over to Patterson Road, which is now getting really busy now that that's been opened up. But previously, we could go over there and ride because that was not a busy area. So, you know, it really affects all the kids in the community. It affects my kids. We can't go outside and ride because it's so busy through there, and they're speeding. So the whole time, if we do that, we're like yelling the whole time, get out of the road, stop, you know, because they're ahead of us riding their bike. So the whole time that we're out there with them, it's just a headache. So again, a lot of the homeowners they're renting their homes out now, so they don't have a big investment in the traffic calming, but there is quite a few of us. A lot of them are going to come tonight. my neighbor actually was going to come, and then, so she said, I'm sick tonight, I'm sorry. But if we would have known that we needed to, we could have got a bigger presence here tonight just to show that they do support the traffic calming. We have a Facebook page for the neighborhood it was advertised there. There was quite a few things that we did in the neighborhood to make sure everyone was aware of what we were doing, and we had a lot of support. So, any questions or?
I would just tell you that, a decision will not be made this evening, so they can certainly come when it's back on the agenda.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yep. All right, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for staff or anyone at this point? All right, seeing none, we will close that public hearing. And we'll now move to item 9B. Thank you very much. Mr. James, good evening. We're going to conduct a public hearing on petition R23-08. This is the Dearness Gardens. It's a request by Ken Forster to rezone 6 parcels totaling 10.07 acres, generally located at 13501 Old Statesville Road, from Highway Commercial Conditional District to Neighborhood Residential, and Neighborhood Residential to Highway Commercial Conditional District and Neighborhood Residential for boundary and site amendments. Mr. James, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening. Thank you.
Good evening.
Please enter the staff report into record. So 2308 Dearness Gardens, conditional rezoning for public hearing. Here's on the screen, you've got the zoning map, so to give you a little perspective of where we're at here. Dearness Gardens was rezoned, I believe, in 93 on the front parcels there in the pink, and I'll show a slide that gives a little better picture of what's going to what zones. But there you see it there on 115, the original Dearness Gardens. This rezoning is to actually, in a way, swap land from the 2 southern parcels to a rear parcel that the owner has purchased. And then the other 2 parcels to the south would go to neighborhood residential, which is more of a residential zone, similar to the surrounding adjacent properties. And the proposed land use would just be to further the existing Dearness Gardens for retail, for plants and similar accessory items. This is a context map on the screen showing surrounding parcels. There's the Cypress Senior Living there to the south that is adjacent to 2 parcels that would be going to neighborhood residential that were in the original Dearness Gardens conditional rezone plan. This is a map provided by the applicant that shows kind of what we're doing here. The main genesis of this rezoning is a boundary change from the original Dearness Gardens. You see in the dark and light purple or pink, depending on if you're colorblind like me with purple and pink, those are the original Dearness Gardens parcels. You've got the 2 at the north and the 2 at the south with some easements in the middle. Those were the original Dearness Gardens properties. The newest owner has purchased the parcel to the rear, which is a hatched area with that purple tone to it. So the new Dearness Gardens would be those 3 northern parcels, where the other 2 to the south would go to neighborhood residential. The 6th parcel that's on this plan is shown for the access easement that actually goes to 115. So they have a small sliver of property as well. Those would go back to neighborhood residential as well. So moving to the actual site plan, seeing what we have proposed here. Like I said, it's mainly to redraw the boundary and add 1 parcel to the west and clean up some nonconformities on site. The original Dearness Gardens plan called for some drainage and some retention of stormwater, as well as some buffering from adjacent parcels. So this plan would not only change the boundary of Dearness Gardens, but also clean up some of that interior items that are within the property. There is a 3,500 square foot accessory building for retail and storage to the rear. I have asked the applicant to be a little more specific on the accessory use, whether it's just for storage of plant items or if there's a proposal for a future, some other kind of retail. That's one question I still have. Then there is some additional plant storage to the far west behind that building and to the north, as well as some additional parking. One item to note, the easement to the south, there's actually two easements. One is temporary, one is permanent. The proposal is to continue to have one to the closest to the property as a access easement with off-site buffering as well. That is one of the modification requests. The first modification request, however, the northern property boundary, you see a 30-foot required buffer to the back portion of the property, which is the added parcel to Dearness Gardens. They have asked for a reduction in the buffer closest to 115. You see there's a smaller buffer there to the north. That would be their first modification request. There are some existing greenhouses within that buffer, as well as some area where they store some of the plant material. The second modification request, which is kind of a tricky one, I touched on it before, but they would like to keep their access easement to the south for access to the back lot. They have an existing driveway that they would like to maintain and would like to add, instead of a 30-foot buffer to that south, which would now be neighborhood residential, they would like to have a 10-foot off-site evergreen buffer that is within the access easement. Modification request number 3 would be to continue to have gravel driveways and parking areas. The Town of Huntersville ordinance requires driveways and parking areas to be paved. This would be a modification request to keep gravel as the existing development has. The applicant retains 60% of the found specimen trees on site. There's a 30% specimen tree requirement. So they are meeting that and exceeding it. So again, the main item here is boundary changes to the original Dearness Gardens and some modification requests for buffering as well as gravel. Staff does recommend disapproval if some of the minor staff comments are addressed during our review cycles. The plan is consistent with Land Use Policy 6.3 and 2.1, which go into items of promoting local businesses and allowing small-scale retail in the downtown vicinity and medium-density areas to continue to bring in those small businesses to the downtown area. We do recommend approval of the 3 modifications. Modification number 1, we recommend on the plan showing how that reduction in 20-foot buffer would look, maybe a cross-section and added landscaping. That way the intent of the ordinance is maintained. Number 2 would be for the landscape easement to be added to that access easement. That way, 10, 20, 30 years from now, that's captured in the plat, that 10-foot easement for the landscaping remains on that access easement. That would make us comfortable to allow that. And then number 3, for the modification for the gravel within the development, we recommend approving that to maintain the aesthetic of the existing development. We do have representatives for the applicant here today. If you have questions for me, I'm happy to answer those before. If you have any questions for them.
And we also have someone who has signed up to speak as well. We'll start with the board. Do you have questions at this point for staff? Commissioner Boone?
And thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is the 3,500 square foot accessory building, what's the height of that building?
Well, an accessory building would need to, be one story. So they haven't specified or given elevations for that. It's one of the questions I have in the last round of reviews, is be more specific on that actual building. So I don't have that information for you now, but it would need to be accessory to the principal building, which is that house on the front. So it would be at least smaller than.
No higher than the house that's in the front.
Right, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff at this time? Do you have any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Kidwell? No? All right. Well, we do have someone who has signed up to speak.
Madam Mayor,
Yes?
I wanted to see if the applicant wanted to say anything to us before a public comment, just in case they had something prepared.
That is fine. Would the
If you want to,
applicant
you
like
can.
come and speak? If you can come up, thank you. And please state your name and address for the record.
Ken Forster, I don't live in Huntersville, but that's my business down
That's
there.
fine.
And all I would really say is that all I want to do is bring the 2 lots into conformance and add the back lot to the garden center. And that's all I intend to do. I didn't want to rezone the other 2 south lots, but I have to. I don't own them, and I'm not going to own them, so. But all I want to do is keep Dearness Gardens as a viable entity, and I think everybody in the community from Mooresville down to Charlotte love that place, so I just want to keep it a viable place.
Thank you. Bob McCauley has signed up to speak on this topic. Mr. McCauley, as you come, you do have 3 minutes, and if you'll please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Bob McCauley. I live at 109 Mount Holly, Huntersville Road, and I also own 107 Mount Holly and 2 other adjacent properties. So I own about 5 acres that are on the northern side of Dearness Gardens. I have no concern with the rezoning. My only issues is with modification 1 with the buffer. If you notice back to the drawing that he showed a while ago, the greenhouse is actually in the buffer now. And also, if you go back to the 93 zoning, it's actually completely through the buffer. It was there in 93, which speaks to zoning reinforcement, I guess. So I had my property surveyed back in 2019 when my mother passed away. And the surveyor said, you realize that they have a decorative fence and bushes all over on your property, so they're all the way through the buffer. So my only concern is keeping a reasonable buffer. And the greenhouse is right there, so I think most of the patrons walk through there, so they're gonna be walking through the end of that greenhouse somehow, so I'm not exactly sure how you're gonna keep hardly any buffer there, so that's my main concern.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Board members, do you have any additional questions at this time based off of what you've heard? Okay. Then seeing none, we will close that public hearing. And we will now move to item 9C, and this is to conduct a public hearing on petition R23-09. This is Golden Cow, a request by H2H Holdings to rezone approximately 0.6 acres at 14516 South Old Statesville Road from Town Center to Town Center conditional for a 1-story retail building. Mr. James, I'll turn it back over to you.
Actually, Jack Semino and I are going to double team this one. He's going to start, so I'll let him.
Great. Good evening,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Semino.
Good evening, everyone. So I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the hard work of the Downtown Plan Steering Committee. They spent over a year of their time meeting and did a wonderful job of preparing the plan. It was ultimately adopted by the town board in April of this year. And so one of the things I wanted to do hopefully the next time we take those pictures, we're going to see more people in these photographs. Great buildings, but we need it's people that make the downtown great. And but the downtown master plan actually looked outside of the quarter mile and looked how that downtown will fit in with the properties, going all the way to I-77 and east past Vermillion and north and south of the two roundabouts. But specifically, the plan concentrated in a quarter mile, and I just highlighted where the block is, where the Golden Cow is going to be proposing for rezoning. But this is the area of concentration that the town board and the Downtown Plan Steering Committee wanted to look at. They were focused on getting an action-oriented plan. So this plan doesn't have a lot of policies like our 2040 plan does. It's action-oriented plan, and this is the downtown master plan that is part of that, that report. And again, this is the block in question where Golden Cow would like to place their property. I'm going to just show you, these are some existing parking lot across the street and the deck. There's also parking on Main Street, and then if the town hall is built, there'll also be some additional parking in that area. And what we have here is, this is the very detail of that block in question. And what I've highlighted in yellow shows the site in question. So you'll see it's right on the edge of some existing homes. And those homes, if you looked at the staff report, those are historic homes. These are homes that have quite a number of years on them. And unlike the 2005 plan, the 2023 plan was recommending preserving those as opposed to taking them down and putting up other structures. With that, again, I want to just thank the Downtown Plan Steering Committee. I will also mention that part of that plan had a conceptual vision. So this was just to give folks an idea how the buildings would sit. So it wasn't these blocks, but actually how buildings might sit on there and where the parking might be and the connections might be. And again, it is intended to just give a visual idea of how land could develop. And it's not going to prescribe people have to do this type of building. And where you see the star, that is actually where the Golden Cow property is located, and they would like to rezone. All of this information is in your staff report, is also in the downtown plan. And now that I've just kind of given an overview of that, I'm going to turn it over to Jesse, and he will talk about the rezoning itself.
Thank you, Jack. So the actual rezoning request will go from town center to town center conditional district for a proposed commercial retail site, 3 to 4 tenant space on that 0.6 acre site at 14516 Old Statesville Road. The context map on the screen kind of shows its proximity to other notable buildings in town. The new Huntersville Town Center, not to be confused with Town Center where DPK and the town offices are, as well as Town Hall to the north. This site would be directly across from the fire station. So the rezoning plan, so the main reason we're here today for conditional district rezoning is the one-story modification request. The code does require 2 occupiable stories. So this, again, is a 5,400 square foot retail building with several tenant spaces within. The town has off-street parking requirements in town center, and it's the same parking requirements throughout town, which is required for 1 space for every 500 square feet of retail space, which in this case would be 11 spaces. They have gone over that by 1 space with 12. The ordinance requires, because of that requirement for on-site parking, there is a 10-foot parking lot screen buffer. Modification number 2 would be to reduce the 5 feet to 10. Here's a graphic that shows the difference between 5 and 10, how that would look. Modification request number 3 would have a dumpster adjacent to residential properties. You see to the east and to the south, there are residential properties. The ordinance requires those to be internal to the property. And there is one specimen tree on site. There is a requirement to save specimen trees. However, this one is diseased and not in the best shape. So that is planned for removal. Get more into the site plan as we go. So the one-story modification request, the applicants through the process have shown some renderings to us during reviews for the front elevation. And throughout that process, we've gone from, around 14 feet to a 25-foot front elevation on a portion of the building. So a typical first floor elevation on a retail center like this is 14 feet. You see that step down to the south, but they have given, and you can see on the elevation number 2, the depth of that 25-foot elevation. So it's not just a faux parapet, it actually is open to the inside. So while they are not providing 2 stories, it does have a perceived second story at 25 feet on the front. So more on the elevations. Part of the downtown plan, as Jack described earlier, talked about mobility, gathering, and soul. So what this plan does and what they have provided is given an active street front. There's 56% of that building frontage is windows. So that's more of a welcoming type street frontage for a retail type business. They have created a pedestrian environment with a patio on the front as well as those windows, and that adds to the gathering area for pedestrians. As Jack mentioned before, and I'll get a little more into that in the next couple of slides, the downtown plan talks about the soul of downtown and respecting historical precedent and keeping it a small town, livable downtown. The applicants have offered a historic type rendering and then step down the intensity of the building as they are adjacent to those historic homes. These elevations are from the sides where you can see there is gathering places on the front and the rear towards the parking lot, and the downtown plan calls that parking lot an alley. However, they have given access to the northern property. So getting into adjacent properties and the block analysis and how they mold into the downtown plan and 2040 land use plan. The downtown plan talks about intentional building frontages that are complementary to existing buildings and to frame streets and open spaces with transition sensitive between adjacent neighborhoods. The downtown plan also talks about stepping down intensity and density near established residential neighborhoods. On the screen, what you'll see here is commercial buildings in red, the dates they were constructed, residential buildings in the same date, and then the proposed Golden Cow. And this is a good perspective of when buildings were built, the size of them, and the land use within. So Golden Cow has provided a street frontage that has that 25-foot, similar to another 2-story building, 2 buildings down. It was built in 1946, has a similar mass on the front, while it steps down next to adjacent residential historic properties. Here's another vantage point for Golden Cow, where it shows kind of that massing as it relates to adjacent properties. And then In 2018, the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Historical Society did a architectural survey of Huntersville's downtown, and there are several properties in and around that, actually on that block, that either were notable or merited attention for further investigation for possibilities of being added to a Historic Landmarks Commission. You see directly to the east, 1923, which is, I believe, the blue house to the right. That would be backed up to Golden Cow, 1933, which merits attention to the south, and other historic homes around that. The reason we believe this is significant is, A, the building that they have proposed blends in with the architecture of an old town, and it steps down its intensity on the rear and the south adjacent to those residential properties while adding similar massing that we would like to see on the front. This is a southeast view of Golden Cow as it relates to those residential homes. So you can see that step down in intensity. So getting into a little bit of difficulties with small infill lots as they relate to some of the ordinance provisions and just the nature of a small downtown with small properties. So because there is a requirement for on-site parking, the driveway width at the front is 26 feet. That's the required driveway width, which it stems down to, I believe, 23 as it goes to the rear of the property. So that takes up a significant portion of the front, while also making it extremely difficult to add the street tree canopy that we need downtown because of the sight distance issues. It also, because of the parking lot, requires screening, buffering. There's a obvious modification for 5 feet down from the 10-foot requirement. The parking requirements, the downtown plan has recommended a parking study be done. That way we can see where existing parking is, proper areas for proposed public parking, and where parking sharing currently is, and where it could happen. This could allow us to do more studies into either a reduction in parking for these type of lots, or to take that away altogether, but it's something that needs to be studied. Two items that the downtown plan and 2040 plan do recommend is encourage incremental small-scale infill development congruent with existing land ownership and parcel geometrics, and to attract businesses downtown. Encourage new businesses that help downtown meet the 10-10-10 goal of having 10 places to serve food, 10 retail establishments, and businesses open after 6 p.m. So we believe this plan would help achieve those two goals. Talking about parking sharing. So you see the rendering on the screen here shows existing parking lots that have shared access. The areas to the north in the black with the red outline currently have shared parking. The second area has shared parking. The first tented area is under one ownership, so those lots have shared parking within. This one is a collaborative parking sharing. Golden Cow, just south of that, would like to gain access and have park sharing to that vehicular area shown. The applicants can speak more to that, but it does have that access easement there to the north for a possible one-day joint connectivity. The yellow shaded areas are driveways for residential lots. So this shows also the amount of driveways along 115, and requiring on-site parking for every lot without parking lot sharing would add that issue of having a parking lot or parking driveway every so feet and not having the tree canopy that we would like to have. This clip of the plan shows the sidewalk that's provided that gives a more than adequate cross-section for the sidewalk. It also shows the amount of street frontage that the driveway encompasses. A 26-foot driveway, 10-foot parking setback eats up a lot of that building frontage. So to end this, considering the downtown plan and land use plan, staff does recommend approval if any minor staff comments are addressed. Staff does believe that this plan improves the pedestrian experience with adding wider sidewalks, a varied building facade of 56% windows on the street. It's a construction of a building that's sensitive with transitions of existing buildings. It accommodates small infill development, establishes opportunity for park sharing or shared parking, and creates new gathering spaces in front and behind the building subject to the 3 modification requests. We believe it is reasonable in the public interest to approve the rezoning plan because the site is small. The important part of that is, the difficulties of building on a small site and not developing the adjoining properties at the same time makes that difficult. And the proposal brings several small businesses to downtown that we desperately need. The proposed building blends with the surrounding development, and the proposal enhances visual interest and walkability in downtown. We do have the representatives from Golden Cow here if you have questions for them. They have a presentation as well. If you have questions for me, I'm available.
So, Commissioner Phillips?
I don't have a question. I just want to say that's like one of the best presentations you've given. For real. No, it was so in-depth and like bringing in the downtown steering plan and stuff. Like you guys did a really thorough job, and I know we're really critical of you guys sometimes, so I want to thank you for doing a great job too.
Thank you very much. Hopefully my other ones weren't bad.
No, it was just, I was like, dang, you're throwing it. I'm telling you, bring the library into it, and I'm like, yes.
Thank you.
At this point, are there any questions for staff? Commissioner Partee?
Mr. James, just a quick question. In our packet, on the first page, item number 3, neighborhood meeting was held on Monday, July 31st, 2023. Questions were asked by the residents and response from the applicants were summarized in the neighborhood meeting. See attachment D. We don't have attachment D on our packet of the recommendations or any of the questioning.
I heard that earlier today. It is actually attached on there. It's called a community plan report.
It's not in the paper agenda.
Oh, so it's not. You're saying it's not attached to the actual staff report?
No, it's not. No, it's not. Correct.
Sorry about that. I usually put them in the packet as an attachment at the end.
Oh, okay. Well, we have the attendance list, but I just was curious to see how the community responded to the proposed plan.
Yep.
So thank you. I'll grab that later on from you. Okay, thank you.
I would say, Mr. James, if you wouldn't mind sending that to everyone so that everyone has a copy.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah, I can forward that to everyone.
Thank you. Are there any other additional questions for staff? I would like to recognize our Planning Board Vice Chair, Mr. Gammon. You have a question?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay.
For the staff. Frank Gammon, Vice Chair, Planning Board. If this plan is approved when it comes back to the town board, but the modification for the dumpster is not approved, where will the dumpster go? That's my question.
That's something the applicant may be able to address. They have, in the past, said that if it has to be moved, it's possible. The reason for the placement of the dumpster where it is now is it's the most practical for pickup. So they've added the evergreen required screening. If you put it more onto the interior of the site or against the building, it would be more difficult for trash pickup to navigate one of these small type lots. So I'll let the applicant speak to that if they better answer than me.
All right, so unless there's any additional questions for staff, I'm going to ask the applicant if they would mind coming up. I believe you have a presentation this evening. And as you come, if you wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the record.
Alex Hanna, I'm the property owner, also the owner of Golden Cow Creamery. I live in Charlotte. So thank you all for your time. Thank you for being here and hearing us out. I'll let you do it and answer any questions.
Justin Maxwell, 512 Katona Avenue, Charlotte. Work for DBR Design, landscape architect. We're working on the site design with Alex. Jesse did a great job presenting the project, and we've loved working with them hand in hand. And the architect is Redline Design Group, the other consultant involved with some of the building design. Wanted to at least mention them. Picture on the left is Alex and his family and his wife and kids.
Yep. So the project's Golden Cow Creamery, but obviously we're not going to take 5,500 square feet. The idea is to bring a food serving establishment, restaurant, tap room, something like that with us up here, possibly another tenant as well. It all depends on where the plan ends up. But we're a family-owned business, started in Charlotte 8 years ago. I'm a CPA, worked in corporate finance and got sick of that. So opened an ice cream shop, and we have 3 locations in Charlotte, one at the corner of Tryon and what's now Brookline Village. We're just truly a family business. We bought the lot to try and grow our business and make Huntersville a better place. And the reason for the zoning changes, in our opinion, is to make the best possible building we can, because it is our legacy, and will be hopefully with us for a very long time. So we want to make the best thing for the lot, and given the constraints of the lot before Huntersville. We can get into the details of why some of the zoning changes are just due to the lot size, and some are due to we want to make a really inviting, fun place that's going to draw people in. For self-interest of owning an ice cream shop, but also because that furthers the community in general.
Yeah, we're extremely excited to be part of this infill into downtown Huntersville. Obviously, Jesse already presented. You know where the site is, right across from the fire station and the public parking garage. Quick concept sketch to kind of give you a little bit more color to the black and white site plan. 115 Old Statesville is on the left there, and showing that outdoor gathering space in the front, and the streetscape, the wider sidewalks, and then the sidewalk coming, and then the entry drive is to the south, to the bottom of the page, coming in and going back to the parking lot. There's a sidewalk along that drive, and then there'll be an internal corridor that kind of invites everybody into the back in a large patio space in the back there for tenant space, which we're showing a old broken down, not old broken down, but
like an ice cream truck or something that we'll make so that kids can play in it and play around it without getting cut, and then also like a play space for kids in the back with some type of natural element that's not a plastic tree house.
Yeah, just bringing the character that Huntersville deserves and giving those gathering spaces for families to come and sit outside, sit inside. Just kind of invigorating Huntersville and everything that's going on. So switch to a couple of the conceptual renderings showing that front facade, that's the 2-story look and feel, and kind of fills in the streetscape there, and then stepping down as you go toward the residential lots. You see that outdoor patio in the front, and the streetscape won't look exactly like that on the lawn. It'll be all concrete, presenting a big wide sidewalk to match some of the other newer streetscapes around downtown.
And just to clarify something, with the two-story will be an actual two-story height. I know Jesse mentioned that, but the option for a tenant that takes that space will be to put a mezzanine in there. It is the height for that, which is a lean towards one of the requirements of the zoning, is that we could have a mezzanine over, I believe, a third or two-thirds of the building. We can't do that, obviously, but there might be a chance if the tenant chooses to do that, to put a mezzanine and have even more activation in the front. So there are functional windows that bring light all the way through. It's not just a parapet.
And then jumping down to the back patio there, showing that gathering space associated with the other tenant in the building, or any of the tenants, or even just public space. And then that's pretty much it. Jump into the black and white site plan that Jesse's presented and the 3 modifications that we're requesting. So at that point, I think any other questions, we're willing and.
Okay. So board members, do you have any questions for the applicant at this point? Commissioner Kovacs?
A few. Where do you generally receive supplies via semi? Or?
For Golden Cow ourselves, we do not. We self-service with a little mini transit van. We are tenants in many other places that do not allow semis, so we don't take any at any of our retail locations. So we can't speak to any future tenants. But I have anecdotally just spoken to, we do have a warehouse where we do take an 18-wheeler so that we can self-distribute, and showed them the plan. And they have ways of getting off the street, especially coming into the 26-foot wide driveway that we have.
I was terrified thinking about a semi just sitting in the middle of 115.
Terrible. Right in front of the fire station, absolutely. It would.
No problem.
Yeah.
You would lose a lot of ice cream if they just drove through that.
Yeah,
Yep, and that's
definitely
something the
not.
operators, obviously will have to work with. I mean, they have many, not full 18-wheelers, they have not even a Sprinter van, but they have in between where they have the smaller, trailer trucks as well. So that's something we'll just have to work with Cisco, News Foods, whoever. But our intention with that 26-foot, dual entry is so that they would go there.
Much appreciated. I've said it to you guys before, but I am thankful for the investment in downtown. I'm slightly worried about parking because I do see this being very busy. Like, I don't think you know how busy this would probably be. But parking, just on kind of on a safety standpoint, most people are going to end up parking in the parking garage and walking across where we don't have a crosswalk. And so I'm concerned about the safety of that. Do we as a town have a plan for that?
I believe the sorry,
No, yeah, I was more than welcome to you take
push you
the
out of the way.
I'll let Jack talk about it.
He stood up, so.
So the downtown plan, the master plan does show a mid-block crossing that leads you from the town center site to the middle of the block where we're talking about, almost in front of this building here. It is an NCDOT road. And so we have to work with NCDOT on that. But the answer to your question is that is part of the plan, part of the vision to have that mid-block crossing, yes.
Are we still, is this a trot question? Are we still looking at Greenway?
Yes, Stephen has the answer for us.
I'm just asking everybody. You're all welcome to answer.
Sure. So we're currently working on the crossing at Greenway and 115. We do have that plan approved through DOT, and we're currently in the property acquisition stage.
But also,
Not much luck so far.
oh, cool. I got too excited too fast. So do you think, if we do get the Greenway crosswalk, and then the one that Jack just mentioned, is NCDOT likely to let us have another one like in the middle?
Don't know.
no rhyme or
Those are
reason with
really close together. You also have a crossing up at the traffic signal here right outside the building. You do look for some spacing between those, not really close together. So we'd have to take a look at that to see if that's something feasible, and then ask the state if they'd be agreeable.
I just know that sometimes people just, they want the fastest route, and I'm worried about people being flattened.
Sometimes downtowns would typically have wayfinding signs to show where public parking is too, so that's an idea as well.
I think that's, so you guys are back up. So besides Golden Cow, you will have space for at least one more business, potentially two?
Potentially two. Yeah, right now it's shaping up because we're in the background trying to see who would be interested. One tenant that would be food heavy.
Food.
Serve. Yeah, it is as much a restaurant as a tap room. It would be both.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Commissioner Munger.
So just for clarification, you have how many other locations right now currently?
We have 3.
Is there a plan for bigger, better, more everywhere? All right.
I mean, no, not outside of Charlotte in any realm of my,
I mean, really, Charlotte's the only area you're looking at?
We produce everything in a commercial kitchen that we own, and we bring
Yep.
it out. So there's a distance to how far we can bring things.
All right.
That makes sense.
Word has it you can build more than one commercial kitchen?
Sure.
Yeah. I was just curious. Yeah, so this would be the...
We're not a chain. I mean, I guess at some point we are. I guess we have 3 locations.
Okay.
Is to bring like-minded people with us, someone else, as of right now, that's, a neighbor in Charlotte.
Mhm.
Not a direct neighbor, not trying to say anything. But that, we would still service it out of the Charlotte.
Okay.
I think part of that is he makes his own ingredients. and
Yeah, I
from
mean, everything's from scratch.
so
We have.
It's hard to, you can't just put it on freeze it and ship it onto a.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Gammon, would you like to ask your question?
Same question.
I figured you might.
Madam Mayor, Commissioners, yeah, and I asked this, and some of this we'll get to at the planning board. I just have some concerns about this being next to residential, potential noise, odor. I mean, all that may be explained away, but if for some reason the dumpster location did not receive a modification that's on the site plan right now, where else would it be moved?
So obviously, we feel like this is the most advantageous location for the tenants and for maintenance. We feel that the wall and everything we're proposing would be gated and completely enclosed and meet all of the ordinance requirements for screening. It would just be a little bit closer to residents than what is allowed, which we are surrounded by residential units on 2 sides, which obviously limits the locations we can put them. So I think there is an opportunity to put it elsewhere in the site, but we will definitely be sacrificing parking, potentially some gathering space, and potentially that connection to the adjacent property. So this is the best location we feel like, and it sounds like planning staff also agrees with us, but we do understand that it's a little closer to residents than.
Any other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Kidwell.
It's kind of combined. Mr. James, you'll be a part of this question, so will the applicant. According to the zoning requirements, this requires two occupiable stories to not exceed or shall exceed 1/3 of the area, and then they mentioned a mezzanine what's that look like? Like, how would a mezzanine go up in that occupied?
It would not satisfy the requirements of the zoning. So we, correct me if I'm wrong, could have a mezzanine over a third of the building, which is not a third of the building. I was just saying that.
Okay, so a mezzanine,
Mezzanine, just for the appearance and look, you know.
yeah, like an old West Town. stuff.
Still
Okay. A lot of talk about parking here, and it's fitting because we're going to talk about parking later. One of the things, I saw here was the site plan shows future parking lot connections, northern property line. I know we have the parking deck, and it's good to hear that we're making some headway with crossing. We got a crossing up here, another crossing at Greenway. Not sure a third crossing is warranted at that point. We got three, we've got two functional crossings. I will say, my question is, if it's going to be 2 to 3 businesses in here, how many employees of each business are you guys expecting?
So I can speak for myself. We have anywhere between 2 to 3.
Sorry, can I just have you step a little closer to the mic, make sure?
Sorry. Yeah, so just speaking for ourselves, 2 to 3. I have no concept of what the other, we could say 10. But that's something we deal with. I mean, we're in downtown Charlotte, literally in the middle of downtown Charlotte. We're also at a very high density in South End and South Park. Our employees don't park where our customers are going to park. It's bad for us. It doesn't help. The average time someone spends in an ice cream shop is 15 minutes. So we don't need, outside of what's required by zoning, I don't personally feel like an ice cream shop needs a lot of parking, and we have 0 in Uptown. We have 0 in South End, and there is very difficult parking in South Park.
I'm going to cut you off here, and I'm just going to.
So we can require them to park further away. We can designate a parking lot operationally that says you can park in this lot, and if not.
I appreciate that, and I've ran restaurants and nightclubs and required my employees to park elsewhere as well, so those individuals, those patrons could use the on-site parking. I'm going to disagree with you on that. You're in and out in 15 minutes. I have a 9-year-old daughter. She does not eat ice cream in 15 minutes. Right, that is a 45-minute sit-down meal with my daughter. Right, and I've got an 18-month-old son who's just getting an ice cream, and that is a lot longer process.
It's 15 minutes to decide on a flavor.
Yeah, it's like watching an artist work.
But to that, I mean, people, so not to counter that, but people, it is, and this is also with the parking and the zoning, and what I think what downtown Huntersville wants is it's a grab and go for a lot of people. So it is something that I think a lot of people, I would hope, come from other adjacent businesses, get ice cream, and go to another one. So I think in addition to having a small space, because we want people to enjoy it outside, it makes our space cleaner and keeps the line moving. Same with the actual building plan in general. It keeps people moving throughout Huntersville and doing other things in the community.
Mr. Semino, sorry to bring you up. I still have you for another month or so going to ask questions. How many people were on our downtown steering committee?
There were 15.
15.
Members, and then we had ex officio members as well.
How many ex officio?
I believe there were 6. Might have been 7.
21, 22 people. Okay, all right. Very good. I know. It's not the plan. That's not my reason for asking. Curious. And I think that's it for right now. Thank you.
Any other questions for the staff or the applicant? We do have 2 folks who have signed up to speak at this public hearing. We'll go ahead and call those up. The first one is Gatewood Campbell. Ms. Campbell, as you come, if you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Gatewood Campbell, 104 Interlaken Place, Huntersville. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I served on the town-appointed Downtown Planning Steering Committee. I come to you with a wealth of knowledge gained from those 13 months of somewhat intense conversations. But tonight, I'm making my own personal statement. Bring on the ice cream. I love that Golden Cow wants to invest in our downtown and sees us not as a risk, but a reward to their proven business model. As we build up downtown, we need retail. Rooftop spring retail, they say. Rooftops are coming across the street, behind me, and over here. If you build it, they will come. So here they come. The Downtown Planning Steering Committee was unanimous in our agreement that we want locally owned businesses, not franchises. This is a small local business with a locally made product and space for other shops or tenants, ready to make an empty lot a viable gathering spot in our downtown. I want to see a walkable, livable downtown with places to go and enjoy. This is an opportunity to check boxes in gathering, mobility, and soul, 3 of our core organizing principles in the Downtown Master Plan. I'll remind us, the 2040 plan and the Downtown Master Plan are guides. They are not the law. Will every single project check all the boxes to both of these guides? Probably not. Can we make adjustments and reasonable compromises based on these guides? Absolutely. For these reasons, I would love to see the staff recommended project approved. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next person who has signed up to speak is Sarah McCauley. Good evening, Ms. McCauley.
Good evening. Madam Mayor, Commissioners, I respectfully request that you deny the Golden Cow rezoning application for these reasons. First of all, I attended the public neighborhood meeting. There's no comments recorded. There was nobody recording comments. And when I asked about it, I was told that we were to send our comments to the petitioners, and they would edit them and send them on to the planning department. Well, you know how believable I would believe that my comments would get there, so I said I would just wait and make mine at the public hearing. So there are no recorded comments from that meeting, apparently, that you received. That's the reason you didn't receive them. I also have researched the Mecklenburg County property public information. And this this was purchased in January the 9th, 2023. We were just into our downtown study group. I never saw these participants or these petitioners appear at any of our public hearings, which were numerous, or attend any of the meetings or comment at all. So they are bringing their idea to Huntersville, which is very commendable to invest in Huntersville, but they are bringing their idea that what they think would be good for Huntersville, rather than what we've already spent a long time with professional guidance and citizen input in developing our plans. I also looked at the Mecklenburg County tax public records on property. As I said, this was purchased apparently in January of this year. There are 2 comments out there on from the county. They're trying to get in touch with these property owners. And my guess is that the address of it is here on Old Statesville Road, and there's no mail delivery there, and there's no post office. So they have a question about the area of the property, the lines of it, and who they are. They can't get in touch with them, apparently. So I think that the one-story, this violates goes against the one-story requested building as a fake 2-story that somebody in the future might decide they want to refurbish and build. The downtown, okay, so I think they should go back and regroup to what Huntersville has, and I request you deny it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McCauley. All right. Are there any additional questions on this public hearing at this time? Commissioner Munger.
Yeah, I'd like to give an opportunity to the applicant to comment on the county's inability to get a hold of you on comments that are made in the public record. Public, yeah, that one, thank you.
Alex Hanna, the property owner. I'm not aware of that. I am aware that our property tax bill was sent to the prior owner, which we then went online and paid and communicated with that owner, just because apparently, and I also talked to the county about this, apparently they're just not fast at updating their records since it closed at the beginning of the year. You would think they would be by July or whenever it comes out. So if you go on to Charlotte Mecklenburg's website, you will see that our business AMH2H Holdings, which has an address, paid the property tax bill on it. So I don't know how they haven't contacted us, but it's the first I've heard of it. There is no mailbox there. I don't think there ever has been. But, you know, we do have a mailing address.
I'd appreciate if you'd take the opportunity to try and reach out and rectify that situation.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Commissioner Phillips.
So I don't look at my phone when I'm up here, but when our town clerk sends an email to the board, I think it's worth peeping. Ms. Pearson let us know that the community meeting report was in the online agenda, and there was just a mix-up with it being in the printed packet. So that was documented.
Are there any other questions for the applicant, for staff? Commissioner Kidwell.
One for staff, and I just want to go back to what former Commissioner McCauley said. Were we not recording comments at the neighborhood meeting? Were individuals told to send them in to the developer or the applicant?
The staff doesn't record anything, and the only requirement is that a community meeting report be drafted and sent back for us to add to the staff report. So I've never been to one where there was like an actual recording. That may happen sometimes, but it's not.
I'm not talking recording, but someone taking notes, someone writing it down.
Yeah, and they took notes, and it was actually in the packet. It just.
I understand that, but the town did not send, it was, the applicant was there taking notes?
Correct. Yep.
Or, okay.
Yep. I think they were jotting them down by notepad on their phones.
Any other questions? If not, I'm closing this public hearing. Thank you. All right, we are going to move to item 10A. And this is to ratify previous action of the town board taken in closed session allowed under the North Carolina Open Meetings Law to award a 2% merit increase effective July 24, 2023, and a $6,000 bonus for the town attorney based on market analysis and performance evaluation.
Madam Mayor, I would like to recuse Commissioner Kidwell since he was not in attendance of that meeting.
Is there a second? Second. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Commissioner Kidwell, we'll bring you back when we're done. All right. Is there a motion on the floor? Commissioner Boone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to ratify the previous action of the town board taken in closed session allowed under North Carolina Open Meeting Law to award a 2% merit increase effective July 24th, 2023, and a $6,000 bonus for the town attorney on market analysis and performance evaluation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Munger. There is a motion and there is a second. All those in favor? And any opposed? That motion carries.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to bring Commissioner Kidwell back to the dais.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Yes, we have to. Is there a second? I'm waiting.
Second.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor? And any opposed? Seeing none. Thank you, Commissioner Kidwell, for being so prompt. We'll now move to item 10B, and this is changes to off-street parking design discussion. Commissioner Kidwell, Commissioner Kovacs. Certainly.
So, contrary to the information that was given to one of our public speakers earlier, this is not to change this tonight. This is a discussion. Point of old discussion is to get input and see, are we in the right direction? I've sent, everybody here has a hard copy. Town clerk has a hard copy to put in the record. And it has nothing to do with the Golden Cow and their parking. It is simply looking at parking generally around the town of Huntersville. And I can tell you that I went to the 760 Brewery to meet some friends. It was completely packed. People were parking everywhere. And including, what I found funny is that we have designated parking for the Greenway down there. Well, that was being used for patrons of the brewery. So we're not enforcing, nor are we following our own guidelines. You know, so when, and I'm just going to address, you know, we need parking for businesses. As I mentioned earlier, ran restaurants and nightclubs. If I did not have, you know, established parking for my patrons, and I would just like, hey, park wherever you want, and then someone came and said, oh, I'm going to build here, here, and here, and there was no parking, the restaurants and nightclubs have gone under pretty quick. I've made my comments, and again, my comments are not final. It is a discussion. They're in bold. Where I've seen it, I would be happy to entertain any comments on this. I'm not looking for any type of action tonight. I just want to have that discussion to see where this board stands, because more than likely, if anything does get moved forward, it will be moved to the next board, whomever that shall be.
Commissioner.
I would just like to say, since we already talked about the Downtown Plan Steering Committee, I don't know if anybody watched those meetings, but parking was a hot topic every single meeting. And the need for parking, and that's just downtown. But for the 6 months that we were dealing with the Birkdale situation and the expansion, the number one thing people requested was parking. Commissioner Kidwell and I talked about how everything we hear about is always parking is the number two complaint. Traffic is first, parking is second. So that's how we ended up requesting to put this on the agenda, just to see if there's something we can fix, because once something's built, there's nothing we can do, and then our hands are tied. So trying to be more proactive than reactive.
Commissioner Boone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Kidwell, the recommendations are in bold print here on a one-bedroom dwelling. You're suggesting going from 1 space to 1.5. Those are your suggestions?
Those are just my suggestions.
Okay.
Those are my suggestions. I downloaded this from our website. Thank you, Mr. Brian Richards, for getting it to me, so I had the right one. And then also, I just used a simple thin crossing out of text, so you could see what our current is, my suggestions, and by all means, I encourage each board member to read over, look at it, and then redline the heck out of everything. Yeah, because that's what we're up here to do. And it may come back, I don't know, in a couple weeks, and you can say, our parking requirements are too strenuous and we need to take them down. And like your comment, sir, and I can't remember your name, Jeff, like Jeff said, remove all parking requirements. I mean, that's part of the discussion, you know, and that's why we're up here. You know, if we're gonna talk about, you know, we're a legislative board, so if we're gonna talk about changing something legislatively for the town, let's have that open discussion and see what we all consider is right and things like that. And then, let me rephrase that, not right, what's good for the town, because there is no right or wrong here.
Commissioner Munger.
Sorry, I absolutely just want to commend you for bringing this to the board, because it's definitely always an ongoing discussion about parking and whatnot. One of the ones that jumps off the page to me is going to be commercial industrial office space. If you take, for example, the Golden Cow that was, applicants, I believe, left the building, but if I understand correctly, the current requirement was for them to have 11 spots. If I read this right and do some quick math, that would translate into about 38 spots?
Yeah.
Am I missing that?
Well, no, roughly. Again, my suggestion.
And
you may come back and say, I think 3.5 is way too much, Commissioner Kidwell. How about 1.75?
That would be me.
Yeah.
That's way too much.
Mr. Munger, again, this is why I'm throwing it out.
And,
there for
and
discussion.
when we're having discussion, and I'm trying to participate
So
in
I-
the
and-
discussion,
and I look at
I want you to
something-
understand
yeah,
that
yeah.
I hear you, but this one's going to bother me, and
Oh, I want it to
there's
bother
a
you.
compromise in the middle,
Good.
and that's my point of discussion. That's why we're having a discussion. So, 100% hear you. The other one that jumps off the page to me is warehouse. Warehouses tend to be very large. And I know 0.5 spaces per square foot, or per 1,000 square foot, doesn't seem that large, but some of those warehouses are massive. And having to put that much parking spaces ruins the effectiveness of those, my opinion. Having a discussion. And I'll leave it at that for now.
Any other comments at first blush? I know that you're just now seeing this. Commissioner Boone, did you have a question?
Yeah, Mr. Kidwell, do you want to go into the bicycle parking, all into that detail where it says all non-residential buildings should include an area for parking bicycles? We had this
I would-
issue once before.
I know.
In front of a, help me out here.
Veterinarian clinic.
Veterinarian clinic
Hambright.
where they had to put in a bicycle rack at a cost to them. And are you looking at for that type of detail?
I would encourage this board to look at every single line and see what jumps out to you that's either not good enough or needs changing. You know, that way we can have spirited discussion up here, and then we get to throw it back at staff, the ordinance advisory board, the planning board, the public, and get everybody else's input as well.
Well, I, for one, am interested to hear what staff has to, what their views are on our existing ordinance as it stands today. Mr. Semino, do you have something to share in regards to the policies that we currently have?
Yeah, so some general comments. One is parking standards in virtually all ordinances are minimum standards. This is the least you can have. The trends now, and so normally, the businesses make determinations on what they need. And nowadays, what we're seeing is communities are actually reducing their parking standards. So the city of Charlotte, with their new Unified Development Ordinance, actually requires 1 space per 750 square feet, and we are at 1 space per 500 square feet. So they're actually reducing their parking spaces. Raleigh, North Carolina, went in a completely different direction and completely did away with minimum parking standards. Raleigh, North Carolina, our state capital, has no minimum parking standards across the entire city. Most of what we're seeing is communities either having a minimum or a maximum. So for instance, in Cornelius, they have 4 spaces per 1,000 maximum. Charlotte has, Davidson has 5 spaces per 1,000 maximum. We don't. We just have 1 space per 500 square feet minimum. Most developments will provide more parking, but we are happy to look at anything that you would like us to look at. We do pay a lot of attention across the state what's happening, and many communities are just doing away with parking in their downtowns. Mooresville, for instance, Concord. So there are communities around here where the downtown, because they want it pedestrian friendly, they'll do away with parking. And then it's up to the business to determine what do I need to stay in business. So those are some of the trends that we're seeing, and I'm happy to provide any kind of information. I will say with bicycle parking, there was a veterinary office that put in a bike rack. And when it came up when that bike rack was installed, and this was out on 21, that bike rack was not required by the town of Huntersville. That bike rack was actually shown on the first plan submitted. So our department caught heat saying, why would you require a bicycle parking for a veterinary office? Well, maybe employees might drive there, but you're not going to be bringing your animals on a bike, right? So, but just to be clear, I know about that specific situation because right after it opened, our office received complaints for requiring it, and I personally went back and looked at the original plan that was submitted before we even commented, and there was a bike rack in there. So that's how the bike rack got in. I think maybe what happened was that whoever the designer was probably worked in Charlotte, where they start requiring them, and they just assumed.
I'm going to miss that knowledge. Right
Oh,
there.
yeah, for sure.
I'm going to miss that.
I've got a PowerPoint already for you, so I'll just email you the PowerPoint. Yes, I can do that tomorrow morning.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much. Commissioner Phillips.
All right. The commercial space thing is very concerning to me because what you're doing is making us a big box town. Small businesses can't afford this. It absolutely is a no for me on that. Also, we need to take into consideration older buildings and dwelling spaces that want to be rehabbed into being businesses and making sure that we're not going to price them out of being able to operate in the town too. So you're wrong. I just want to say that on the dais for the record.
I'm going to repeat myself because there seem to be people hard of hearing up here. I threw out the biggest numbers possible to stoke your imagination. All right? And I'm asking for feedback back. Huh? Yeah. Yeah. Lance wants to raise your taxes tenfold. We say no. So I'm doing that. I'm not trying to kill businesses. I'm trying to get us to spark conversation. Because let's be honest, the past 2 years up here has been dull with you guys with conversation. So let's make the last few months a little bit fun.
No, and that's why I love getting to say that you're wrong right now. But I think it's cool too because all of us have different backgrounds. And mine is background in small business and historic stuff. So you're allowing us to actually have a say in something with our knowledge instead of it being cookie cutter nonsense. So I appreciate
And
it.
mine comes from commercial, industrial, and office.
Boring stuff.
Yep, boring stuff.
Oh, my. All right. Are any additional discussion around this topic at this time? All right.
Actually, yes, ma'am.
Yes.
When would you like us to come, ideally? What's your plan, timeline when you would like us to rediscuss this and actually bring materials back instead of just being
Yeah, let's
like this?
say first meeting October. Just have it to Jack by first meeting in October. Email your comments to Jack Semina.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to item 10C. And this discussion is around Environmental Studies Committee. Commissioner Boone, Commissioner Munger. Turn it over to the both of you.
All right, so, all right, if I go? All right.
Absolutely.
So I believe everyone up here has had the opportunity to speak to a couple gentlemen out in the audience, and it was brought to us the idea of trying to establish an environmental sustainability committee. Kind of came up with the name of an environmental studies committee based on some of the things that I'd seen there. And my specific point of reference that I've kind of used throughout this process is town of Davidson. As a computer programmer, the best thing we can do is Control-C, Control-V, copy and paste. So if someone's already done all the work for you, figure out what worked for them and what is the best going forward. So part of what Davidson did is they actually had a study, a sustainability analysis done by UNC Charlotte. The outcome of this was a focus on major significant areas. The key strategy areas were air, water, land, and collaboration. And I'm just going to give you some quick bullet points on those. Air, implement energy efficient standards for construction and renovations, promote public transportation initiatives, install public EV charging stations, and promote the use of EVs within the town fleet. Water, use permeable pavement technologies, partner with Mecklenburg County on watershed management, and encourage rain gardens. Land, encourage Encourage town-wide composting programs, create town gardens, implement further tree save initiatives, And then the last part was collaboration, develop a sustainability webpage, and establish a community advisory board. So that's kind of the steps that they went through, and that's kind of the direction I was hoping to go in. One of the comments I've heard in general is, government tends to overregulate. We have a specific scenario I will point to, and people in the crowd, this is fascinating to me. I don't know why, but as most of you know, a couple years back, we had a little pipeline spring a leak. Tiny leak, 1 million or so gallons, give or take, of gasoline into the environment. Do you know how that pipeline checks to see if there are leaks? They fly an airplane over the top of the pipeline and look down. And they look for dying trees or pools of gasoline. And they say, oh, we might have a problem there. Do you know why they do that? Because in the 1980s, the EPA standard said that's what they should do. They have not evolved over time. There's 1,000 ways they could have done it better and figured out how we can figure out if we have a leak before it becomes a major issue. Could you imagine if they caught that at 50,000 gallons as opposed to 1 million gallons? It still would have been an environmental travesty, but 1 million gallons. This is why government needs to be involved in the process and look into things. We know climate change is real. We know that the best steps to regulate this are for the government to step forward, because corporate America is basically saying, I will do whatever you tell me to the letter, not a single thing more. So we need to do what's best for the environment, and so that people such as your grandchild, my grandchildren, their grandchildren can enjoy the world and prosper. That's all I want out of this type of thing. And it's a good first step. It says that as a town, we care about the environment, and we're trying to do what's best for our future generations. I'll get off my stump now. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there any discussion? Commissioner Boone?
Yes, Lance and I did sit down and we've talked about this with several people, and I was under the impression that we would have a environmental subcommittee under the planning board for a year, maybe 3 years. And that's where I am as far as the whole process of this. And that's why we're having the discussion there. Just like when we talked about this, I think you ran out there, got 5 or 6 people on to say already. But we've got to go through a process of getting applicants and advertising this for 30 days. And just looking at the time frame, I believe this is our 5th meeting till the new board takes over. I just don't think there's going to be enough time to put this together, but that's just my opinion.
Anyone else? Commissioner Kovacs.
I can just speak from experience on having to pick a committee that a previous board set in motion, and that was frustrating. So I'm not necessarily saying I'm against the idea, but I do think it would be a good idea if we look into this to have the next board decide. Because when we got on, well, you were an incumbent, but when Commissioner Partee and myself were elected, we came on and we had to vote on the people for the Downtown Plan Steering Committee after the previous board had created that committee. And then I had heard, well, that's not really how we wanted that to go, and that's not how we wanted that. And I'm like, I don't know, you guys created the committee but made us put the people on it. I think it's a little more effective when it's start to finish the same people, just to that point. Yeah.
Commissioner Munger?
I'd just like to counter that particular point and look how effective that committee ended up being.
Commissioner Partee?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think it's very important that we do establish an environmental studies committee. I have and is presently working with the town of Davison, the North Met Communities United, Reverend Dora DuBose and their committee on the asbestos landfill situation there. I have my master's in public administration and environmental studies also. So they have asked me to help them out, and I think it's very important that we also here in the town of Huntersville, especially with the ocular melanoma situation, that we have a studies committee. So I'm all in favor for it. Thank you.
Commissioner Kidwell.
So I'm a firm believer if you want a clean house, you start with your own house. I buy into solar power. I don't know if anybody else up here does. I do that to try to negate some of the energy I use, other clean energy called nuclear, that Energy United purchases. So I start with my own house. I recycle. We recycle, and let me tell you, recycling is a bit of a scam when you go to the dump and see what they toss versus what's actually allowed to be recycled. So if you're not paying attention, again, start with your own home. Know what you can or cannot throw away and what cannot be recycled. Just because it says recyclable on it doesn't mean it can actually go into that bin. We primarily only put cardboard in ours. I work in an environment, and we're constantly working to create a sustainable environment in the label and pressure sensitive market and manufacturing, where we're creating labels that can be put on PE packaging and tossed right into the recycling, because right now it can't. So again, I go back, start with yourself. Having another layer of bean dip, which I call the government, might look great at a party, but it's not effective. You brought up EPA. We got politicians up north, and they're supposedly pretty darn smart, and they haven't updated something since the 1980s. Now, I do remember that guy saying, yeah, we fly over, but they've also introduced robots that go down these pipelines to inspect for cracks. That's not required by the EPA, that's done by them, because they're losing a lot of money. And let's face it, corporations are about the bottom line. They're about losing money. So when they lose 100 million gallons or 200 million gallons, whatever, that's, they've lost a ton of cash, and that they can never get back. In fact, it's impacted them so much where they probably spent more money than they would have made on the fuel they would have sold. All right, so there is some reason behind for them to do their own work. The DEQ of North Carolina is headed up by Secretary Elizabeth Beiser. Her number, 919-707-8622. She's the individual appointed by the governor who sets the standards for environmental quality and justice within the state of North Carolina. I'd encourage giving her a call and ask her what she's doing about the state of North Carolina. What is the state of North Carolina doing? Let's worry about what we can do here in our own homes. You take care of your house, I'll take care of my house. If we do that, the entire neighborhood will be taken care of. Hunters will be moving forward. Since you brought up coal ash, Commissioner Partee, not coal ash, I'm sorry, ocular melanoma, I will tell you, we brought in individuals from the state on ocular melanoma. We brought professors and doctors from all over the country. There are still, we haven't had a case lately, but there are still pockets of OM happening all around this country. I firmly believe it's coal ash. I firmly believe that an entity larger than NASCAR in the state of North Carolina helped spread that around in terms of infill and development. There is not one thing that a small town or a large town would have done to stop that. Because they would have listened to the scientist who said, no, it's safe. I don't support this because it's going to be elected officials appointing people they think will be good at a job, and they have no teeth. They can do nothing. They can't come up here and say, you're going to do this or we're going to fine you. We're going to ban plastic bags or we're going to fine you. How are you going to do that? We're going to ban plastic forks or we're going to fine you. How are you going to implement that? I'm just saying, I think that the town has started with putting in the stations, the EV stations. We talked about purchasing, well, the golf cart is considered an electric vehicle. So for what it's worth, we purchased a golf cart that's an electric vehicle. We've talked about hybrids for some of town staff, which I am a fan of hybrids. I think hybrids are the future. I applaud anybody who's got a hybrid. I think they're great. It does not suit my need. Otherwise, I'd buy one. But bottom line is, Elizabeth Beiser, Secretary of the EDQ for North Carolina, 919-707-8622. Give her a call. Ask her what the state is doing to help North Carolina.
Commissioner Kovacs.
So, Commissioner Kidwell, you brought up fining. And I guess, I don't know if I'm being naive or what, but I was assuming this was more of an advisory type board. So Commissioner Munger, can you clarify what, just because that brings up the discussion, are you discussing trying to change ordinances that would go for fining and things as such, or are we talking about advisory, like what the town themselves can do to be more environmentally friendly? What are we looking at?
Sure, yeah, so I apologize for going down the pipeline kind of line, because that did give an indication that it might be more of a regulatory. It is meant to be more of an advisory type of situation. One of the things, just to clarify on a comment I heard, public banning plastic bags, plastic forks is against state law. NCGA will not allow us to do that.
I know.
You brought it up. I'm addressing it. This is a discussion. This is how discussions work. And you want to talk louder than me? Good.
I don't need a microphone.
I like my microphone. We're good friends. I don't know if it makes sense for it to be a standalone committee or to roll up to the planning board. To me, that's part of the discussion. And part of what I tried to start this with was the points of the air, water, land, and collaboration. It's thought processes into what we can do, what we can try and do as a town, what we can try and, I mean, I like the idea of a town garden. If you had town gardens a couple different places throughout town, it has that feeling of community. It gets involved and it gets people, to interact. And it also, it is environmentally friendly. And I don't have all the answers, but the idea for me is if we can put 9 people together in a room who are interested in trying to find the right ideas, they can do that. I have no desire to be one of those 9, but let them figure out what's the best course of action. And I think it's purely an advisory capacity, not a regulatory, if I'm saying that correctly. And I believe you have.
Ms. Luke.
Yes, sorry, I just wanted to make one minor clarification. So in looking at the statutorily set duties of the planning board, this would not fall within the purview of the planning board duties, so it would be a standalone committee, such as Downtown Steering Committee, Parks and Rec Commission, et cetera, or it could be structured as a subcommittee of the town board members. But I just wanted to clarify that if the board did decide eventually to move forward.
I would say that this board has some sustainability initiatives. That's part of our goals. The one thing that jumps out at me is that we don't, on the board, have anyone really leading the charge, right? So that, I think that's something that you may want to consider. Commissioner Phillips, you had your hand up for a very long time, and I wanted to
I
acknowledge
just
you.
keep getting skipped. It's cool. So this board's never sent a letter to our state senators, U.S. senators, or Congress about things that we want to change. So I think it's quite infantile to jump ahead of the process when we can't even jot our names down on the same sheet of paper advocating for something. And like community garden, why aren't we doing more sustainable and green things under the current departments we already have? Like we already have greenways and that, so put those initiatives. Because fun fact, my background is environmental health and safety compliance, and I have sat and filled out thousands of EPA forms and dealt with some of the worst things ever. If we're gonna do it right, we need to do it right, and frankly, as someone who went to high school with people who passed away from ocular melanoma, my grandfather being patient 0 in the cancer cluster and dying, I don't want random strangers sitting around thinking about things with this cancer, because we've tapped into these experts who don't know why, and I think that it's a slap in the face to our families. Like, our relatives that have passed, they are not for people to campaign on or theorize on, and so if I've been through that, and I'm not speaking for all the families, but I am still close with a couple of them, and even people who are, we have a survivor in the community. We need to be mindful of her and what she's been through. So if we're gonna do it, let's sit down and really hammer out, this is what we really wanna focus on. What can the community be engaged on? And do we wanna set aside money to hire experts? Because for 4 years, I've sat up here and advocated for us to hire experts for ocular melanoma, and we keep getting the Dylan Rule Mother May I stuff. So I get where you're coming from. I respect where you're coming from. I sat with you and tried to help you get the plastic bag thing to somewhere, because I know that is your passion. So please know I'm not hating on this. I just want to be mindful about everything, and we can start at a basic level by sending Congress and our freaking federal senators asking for an EPA change, bare minimum. So you got me at least there.
Commissioner Kovacs.
I was just going to make a comment that I see where you're coming from, Commissioner Munger, and advisory is definitely more the route that I was assuming. And I'll just explain. When you said, hey, are you down with this? And I said, yeah. I was envisioning something kind of like the Affordable Housing Task Force, more like a task force type thing, where the people that were chosen for that have a background in that field, and then they could advise us on appropriate ways that we can run campaigns through, like our PIO, about how to be sustainable throughout the town, how we can, when we're coming into our budget season, things that we might be able to tweak or change, things like that. That's what I was just envisioning in my head. And then my big brothers got into an argument tonight, and so I don't even know where we're headed.
For reference with the Affordable Task Force, the mayor and I worked really hard behind the scenes on that, and we came out with a plan. We involved people like Bobby Williams and other staff. So if there is a way to write it out where it's on paper, black and white, and everybody is in the know, and then it comes up here for a vote, then you got something going.
I like that. That's how I was envisioning, like a set plan.
But that was months of work the mayor and I put into it.
Commissioner Kidwell?
Yeah, and glad you brought up Bobby Williams. And I want to give Bobby Williams a shout out. Reached out to Bobby and put him in touch with Barb Bleweiss of the Soil and Water Conservation District. And together, the three of us were able to get something at the Board of County Commissioners that protects over 13,000 acres of farmland in Mecklenburg County. Again, started with our own house. It's 13,000 acres that have protection available. Thank you.
Commissioner Boone?
One last comment, Commissioner Munger, looks like we got the discussion started. And just a history lesson, 10 years ago, the town did have a community garden that didn't do very well, but where it did, where it was successful was the local churches. When the local churches put in community gardens, they did very well. And thank you for your time putting this together.
So Next steps? Are there next steps?
So I just want to throw out there that one of the compromises that did resonate with me, because honestly, my belief is compromise is not a four-letter word. We should do it all the time. The task force does make a bit of sense, and I mean, I'd be open to that. The addressing, sending out a letter that we could all jointly sign to our members of Congress, our senators, definitely sounds like a step in the right direction, but for that, I would want us to be able to address specific things that we would want to be addressed. In that, we can't just say, hey, we need to say this, I want this addressed, or different things. So, to me, it feels like an ongoing discussion. I'm a lot more passionate about it. I get that. And not everyone has to be passionate about the same thing. We all care. I'm not, trying to throw anyone under the bus. I do appreciate having the discussion. So I would like us to entertain the idea of sending a letter. I'd like us to entertain the idea of creating a possible task force specific to it. And if there's anything else that anyone would like to add, I'm open to that as well.
So then, moving forward, you will get with fellow commissioners to work through a couple of these and see where it leads. Good? All right, great. All right, now we're going to move to the last item on the agenda, and that is item 10D, and it is to approve the Lake Norman Chamber of Business Expo Facility Usage Agreement. Commissioner Kidwell?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to recuse Amber Kovacs since she sits on this board.
Is there a second?
And Commissioner Boone.
Oh, okay. So two of you are leaving. There's a motion, there's a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none. Thank you both for stepping away. All right, so it was originally under consent is item 8E, if you need to go back and refer back to it. Is there a motion on the floor?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Lake Norman Chamber Business Expo Facility Usage Agreement.
Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Commissioner Partee. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Kidwell?
This is for the chamber event that we host every year at the Rec Center. Under the agreement, would Commissioner Phillips, under the indemnity clause under 7, would you be willing to add, the chamber shall indemnify, comma, defend, comma, and hold harmless?
I will accept that amendment
And I will
and ratify my motion.
Is there any discussion? Because Commissioner Partee, you seconded that? I would ask that question.
So similar to the fire services agreement, this particular template did not previously have an indemnity clause. So when we were updating the template, we added an indemnity clause to further protect the town. Typically, the clauses that we use don't include the word defend because it includes paying for the attorney's fees, and that gives the town the ability to maintain control over any defense and litigation, but still get reimbursed for attorney's fees. But if the town board would like to add the word defend, that is the town board's prerogative. It doesn't take away from anything. It just would include them actually defending us in litigation versus just paying for the litigation expenses.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, there's a motion, an amended motion, and a second. Is there any discussion, any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Those opposed? All right, that motion passes.
Motion to bring back Commissioner Kovacs and Commissioner Boone.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. All right, all those in favor? Okay, if Commissioner Kovacs and Boone would please come back. Thank you. All right, we are now, we are rounding the corner, folks. We are at Mayor and Commissioner reports. Commissioner Munger.
I get to go first for once. I have nothing to report.
Great. Commissioner Partee.
Thanks for that, Commissioner Munger. In light of the upcoming September 11th memoriam, I just wanted to just make some comments, and then I'll go into my commissioner's report. In 2000, I was assigned by Nassau County Commissioner William Willett to the FBI NYPD Joint Terrorism Task Force. Upon passing stringent background investigation, I was sworn in and given U.S. Deputy Marshal status and top secret clearance. In many of those I had the honor to serve with on September 11th, I posted a timeline on my Facebook page. This post is a copy of my reported timeline submitted to my commanding officer, Lieutenant Matthew Brady, on that day, on September 11th, 2001. The attack on the World Trade Center was a scene of anger, death, destruction, fear, horror, shock that we as first responders had to endure. First responders do not have time to process all this emotion. We go into the realms of hell to save souls without fear or reservation, and on this day, all hell opened up in a ferocious double strike on the two Twin Towers. To protect this country and the citizens from foreign and domestic enemies is the oath that I took when I wore my hand up as a Deputy U.S. Marshal. Americans that day came together for months after September 11th. The cheers of citizens lining the streets on the west side for us traveling back and forth to Ground Zero every day was an awe-inspiring experience. At that time, my partner who responded with me downtown, Gustave DeFlorio, passed away from a serious illness, cancer. In my timeline, in my memory, in my videotape is a memorial to him and to our response down there. Next, I also want to, and I always will, advocate when it comes to victims in response to sexual assaults that happened in South Charlotte and on their greenways. I will always advocate for alertness and give safety tips as to using our greenways and our parks. But anywhere we respond, anywhere we're at in this town, just be alert. My wife, Michelle, and I are trained, certified sexual offense investigators, and I investigated many sexual criminal assaults and cases. Our network of greenways afford predators to use to these crimes, and I have put together some suggestions for our community to use and stay alert. Number one, use a buddy system if possible. Number two, stay alert of your surroundings on the paths. Number three, carry a cell phone and use the voice command to dial 911 if you feel it's not right. Single joggers and walkers wearing earbuds and headphones are easy targets, so just be cognizant of that. Always alert a family member and friends to know that the time and your entryway to the greenways that you are using. Next, I always talk about advocating for safety when it comes to guns. This past September 2nd, 2023 in Statesville, tragedy hit when a 3-year-old was shot accidentally by a 5-year-old from a weapon that was unsecured in a car. I always advocate because I had responded to these type of calls and investigated when there's children involved. We have gun locks at the police department, and I want to advocate for anybody. Please, if you have neighbors, if you have family, just pick up a gun lock and have them secure their weapons. It's very important. There's a family in Mooresville right now is grieving for a young 3-year-old. And as always, I want to advocate for our nonprofits. If you can, please donate.
Thank you. Commissioner Kidwell?
Madam Mayor, I have no report. I do have a comment, then I'll wait till the final, let everybody else get through the reports.
Commissioner Kovacs?
the Lake Norman Chamber. This Thursday, September 7th, from 8:30 to 10 a.m., the Chamber will have a business before hours at Hookit Golf in Huntersville. The Chamber will be collecting items for Lydia's Loft. Come out, network, and help someone in need. And if you haven't been to Hookit Golf, you're in for a treat. It's at 340 Siegel Street, Suite 15, here in Huntersville. Monday, September 11th, the Chamber will have a special ribbon cutting at CPCC. The college is planning some exciting projects. We will get the opportunity to meet President Dietmeyer, the faculty, and tour some of the campus. The Chamber is currently accepting applications for Leadership Lake Norman through this Friday, and we'll have a special focus Friday, this Friday at 8:30 a.m. to hear from CMS officials on the $2.5 billion bond package. And lastly, Bill Russell has Birkdale Village as a spotlight on his radio show, Town Talk, tomorrow from 4 to 5 p.m., when he will have Tim Perry with North American Properties, John Dressler with Dressler's Restaurant, and Bill Kenny with Kilwin's Chocolate Fudge and Ice Cream. For more information, please visit lakenormanchamber.org.
Thank you. Commissioner Boone? No report. Commissioner Phillips?
No report.
Great. So I have one quick report, something that stumbled across my in my emails this actually today, and I wanted to share. The Women's Suffrage National Monument Foundation is working now to create the very first national monument to American women's history and down the mall in Washington, D.C. When House Bill 473 passed in 2020, giving them the ability to create this monument, they have been working diligently ever since to raise funds. So if there's anyone interested in supporting the Women's Suffrage National Monument Foundation, you can go online and check them out. But it will be the very first monument to American women. And I think that's pretty cool. So that is all I have this evening, other than to say, I hope you all had a wonderful Labor Day weekend. It's always good to be able to take a moment and spend some time with family. Commissioner Kidwell, you said you had something else that you wanted to share.
I do. On August 12th of this year in Plum Borough, Pittsburgh, an explosion rocked the community, leveled out like 4 homes. An individual that passed away was a dear friend of my in-laws. Just a few weeks ago, up in Mooresville, another explosion took a home down, and it took a life with it. Both of these explosions are thought to have begun because of natural gas or a gas leak. In the one in Plum, where my wife is from, the father, the individual my in-laws knew, his neighbor and his son went down to investigate because the homeowner said, "I smell gas. Can you come down and take a look at it?" Commissioner Boone used to say, if you see something, say something, up here when he was giving reports before the fire and police. And I'm going to modify that and say, if you smell something, call somebody. Gas is no joke. Natural gas can fill a house, and just a spark from a rock in your shoe hitting a strike plate in the door can cause that to go off. I only bring this up is we're entering into fall season. People are going to be starting their gas fireplaces up, their gas heaters up. I recommend that you get those inspected and checked because we don't want any explosions in Huntersville, and hopefully this goes out to beyond our town to where we don't want any explosions, period. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn?
Is there a second? All those in favor? Good night, Huntersville.